welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be joined by someone who's going to be sharing some very special circumstances and what it is to become spiritually awakened. Most people seek church, they seek guidance through coaching, whatever the case may be, but it's really difficult to find out what pinpoints the exact way that we unfold spiritually. She's joining us here on the program today to talk about A Disintegration of My Ordinary Reality, which is a narrative nonfiction memoir that describes spiritual awakening after the death of her husband, who struggles with others' perceptions of sanity and ongoing work to embrace a role with someone in the foot of everyday reality. I'd like to welcome to Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Ms. Lori Morrison. Lori, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Well, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate the invitation to talk to your audience.
You bet. Now, let's talk about what a spiritual concierge is.
Well, I was, because of a very remarkable experience that occurred while I was living on a volcanic lake in the middle of Central America, I experienced a kind of a disintegration of what I was seeing in the normal world that we all walk in. And for 2 years, I lived in this kind of interdimensional space where I had a whole different perception of the world. And that gave me a unique perspective on the human experience, and I was able to realize that it's much, much more than what we see. So I use the term concierge because a concierge is usually someone who has been somewhere or knows the territory of places where people have not been before. And so I've used that term to somewhat describe what I do.
Now, let's talk about how this actually happened. What was going on, I suppose, on a mental, physical level, that sort of thing?
Yes, I was, like I mentioned, I was living at, my husband had passed away, and a year after that, it was my 52nd birthday. And I had some staff that working at the house, and so one evening, this would have been a few days before my birthday, a cloud appeared at the land where we lived, and it rained just on me. And we were all rather shocked and surprised, to see this experience occur. And so we, at the time, we just kind of shrugged it off like something very, very odd and strange. After that, on the 52nd birthday, I was at the end of the peninsula where I lived, and I was struck by some light, and I left my body for 3 hours. And when I came back, I saw the world through the lens of sacred geometry. And so it was very tumultuous time, very, very unsettling, very fragmented time. I didn't know how to, put it into any kind of framework. I wasn't sure of these things, didn't realize why I could see spirits, hear spirits. And they were all, in that case, speaking to me in a language, a very ancient Mayan language that I understood, which I thought was also very odd because since I did not know or speak of this language. So all of this happened at one time, and of course put me into a very fragmented state, not really knowing, how to make any kind of normalcy out of what had happened.
Now, what did that transformation feel like for you as opposed to how everyday life was?
I saw everything had triangles. I could see everything in a kind of an interdimensional place. In other words, I didn't see that anything had any solid form. For example, when I would drive down my car, I would see real people who had form, but then I would also see spiritual beings that also had form for me. So there wasn't like a distinction between the two. So I ended up actually not being able to drive because I was not sure who was in form and who was not.
Now, I'm sure people are very fascinated on what it feels like when there is a change on perception. What was that like for you?
Well, I think it was I was a very left brain entrepreneur. I had businesses. I used my brain for Excel spreadsheets and things like that, not for thinking about things that were outside of the normal perception of what I was doing in my life. So I really didn't have a framework for putting these phenomenal events in some type of order of understanding. I did some research after this happened. At the time, I was too disjointed to even do any research, but I did research after, and I realized that in many of the indigenous communities, these experiences would occur, and what was happening was someone in the tribe was becoming the seer or the shaman or the individual that would receive these gifts and be able to support their community in some way. I, of course, didn't see it that way at all. It was very disturbing, and actually, in the indigenous communities, it's almost considered a curse because it is so such a disjointed experience. I went further to do some investigation in the Mayan world since I was living in Latin America for 30 years, and I did sense this connection to this Mayan, ancestry. And I realized that on your 52nd birthday, the Mayans would talk of a transitional time, and that is the only day that your Gregorian calendar, which we use in our world, aligns with the Mayan calendar. And the importance of this is that the Mayan calendar was based on the movement of the planets. It's based very much on the authenticity of the universal flow of energy. So it's more of the natural calendar that our bodies live with, yet the Gregorian calendar, came in as more of a human-imposed system. So the Mayans spoke of this day, of this calendar day, when the two are actually on the same day. And that is the day that they considered that we move from kind of student to teacher. And they spoke of people going through these transitionary states on that kind of, it was almost like a little portal into your life or to your journey where you can go into these transitionary states.
Now, I'm curious, why the Mayan tradition?
They were very involved in calendarization, and in fact, they have 17 calendars. We have one, and they saw our journey on Earth as cycles, different cycles of time as we spent here. So they oftentimes identified the human journey in a calendarization concept. And that's why when we go to their sites and we see their ancient ruins, much of their message to humanity was about the calendarization of the human journey. They're also very connected to the symbolism of the tree of life. We see that symbol everywhere. But what does it mean? What were all these indigenous communities leaving these symbols on rocks for us to see? What was the importance to us for that? In fact, recently in Turkey, there's been an absolutely amazing discovery in a place called Göbekli Tepe. This will change the calendarization of civilization because it's about 12,000 years older than we thought civilization even occurred on the planet. And lo and behold, what do we find there? We find a symbolism of the tree of life. And so what the tree of life symbolizes, because most of the time you see it with a snake, and what that snake means is that our purpose about coming to Earth is to be here, go through this journey of the roots, starting in the roots, moving through the trunk, navigating this tree above, And what the snake represents is the emergence of our Kundalini energy. In other words, that spiritual energy that resides in the lower sacrum of the body. And when this happens, we reach a state of enlightenment. And there's, the Eastern religions know a lot about this, but unfortunately the Western culture is not that aware of this of this energy experience. And this, after some investigation and study, was what I realized had happened to me.
Now, what kind of ways would you say that you changed? I mean, what was different about, I guess, day-to-day, so to speak?
Well, I realized that if I feared anything, I would bring it to me. And I realized that fear was probably my greatest enemy in creating an environment around myself of joy and happiness. As soon as the fear would kick in, because I was in such an enlightened state, as soon as the fear would kick in, something would occur to bring it towards me. And I started to learn, and also the Mayans have always known this and taught us that they called Earth the planet of the mirrors. And they spoke of this, that whatever we are feeling or whatever we are thinking or doing, however we walk the world is how the world is going to reflect on us as to what is the world like for us. So I learned that if I wanted to change things in my world, I needed to take a look at myself, because I was creating the reflection of my life's journey. And so I realized there was absolutely nothing in the external world that was going to change anything that was going on with me. Everything had to be done from my perspective.
Now, you certainly had what you would consider to be mental, physiological phenomenon. What would you say the mental health community thinks about somebody who's gone through a spiritual transformation like this?
Well, again, this is probably my most passionate piece of what happened to me, because I was in such a fragmented state. Everyone assumed that I had gone through some type of mental illness and I needed to be labeled. I ended up twice in a mental facility. There were lots of labels thrown around, borderline schizophrenia, bipolar, all kinds, a whole long list of things. Everyone was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And, of course, the next step was to, pathologize what had happened and give me some medication. I was put on medication, and what happened was it did make the whole situation worse. My hallucinations became completely out of control. I was managing it fairly well, the difference in the multidimensional universe, but with the medications, it complicated matters and kept me actually longer into the medical and psychological system. So when I kept trying. I did the best that I could to try to work through that system. But finally, I had a wonderful psychiatrist who, after 6 months, after I was telling him what was going to happen the next day, because I was able to see through time, but there was no time I could see future as I could see the past or whatever. But I could also see into people's bodies and see what was wrong with them, where there was energy that was stuck or creating disease. And he finally came up to me one day and he said, "Lori, I don't think the psychiatric profession can help you. I think you have something far beyond the reaches of this profession." And so I said, "Well, what do I do? So where do I go now?" And he said, "I believe that you have a spiritual experience, and you need to be with spiritual people who understand these experiences and can help you get through this."
Now, how would you define spiritual?
I think spiritual is recognizing the energy and the spirit inside of all of us. It's the kind of almost like the aura of the soul. It's our connection to all things, to the universal world, to the energy around us. And a lot of times we don't feel connected. We are connected. And spirit is that sense, that cord that connects us to this kind of universal grid of energy that we all live in.
Now, how did you see people who have known you seemingly change around you, or did you feel something like that was happening?
Yes, there was a lot of chaos and confusion among people. I could sense everyone's feelings. I could sense positive and negative. I was in such a high sensory state that I was having problems actually having any kind of normal conversation because I was working mostly on thoughts and feelings. Speaking to me seemed actually futile. I felt that I had a much better opportunity to connect with people without speaking. And I think that there's a lot of children who are like this. When you see them coming in, they're actually communicating with you. And some mothers might notice this, or grandparents. They're actually communicating with you, but you can't communicate on that level. So I felt much more comfortable in a non-speaking way, feeling people's energy and relating to them. So that's not a normal thing in our culture, and so you usually get pathologized that there's something wrong with you.
Now, would you say that people were interested in kind of pursuing this as a result from your inspiration?
Explain that to me again, the question.
Would you say that people, I guess, close to you, as they began to see, well, this isn't some kind of crazy turn my friend is taking here, but, it's something that I'd be interested in, kind of a way of looking at things?
I think everyone saw it more as time went by, and I think as the label started to, disintegrate. I think labels can be very frightening, especially for my parents, when they heard the word schizophrenia or mental illness. I think we all run, for cover. It's a very scary thing to think that the mind might be in a disorderly state and that there may not be an easy solution for that. They felt it like a disability, that I would maybe never be able to function in the world again. And I think when that turned around and the labels dropped off, I got involved with the right, people to support my journey. Then everyone realized, wow, this, she's got a gift here, and this is something that she could enhance our family with, and also the people around her. So I think it changed the whole, the whole view of what was really going on. I had two mentors. One was a very well-known psychic in the world. She taught me about, what was real and what was not, and kind of helped me sort it out. And then I had two women who were third-generational shamans. One was from Haiti, and another one was in Sedona. And, they helped me put together the pieces of what I was seeing. And I think that the moment when I realized that what I was seeing was real and that other people had these perceptions, then I was able to get out of the label of being abnormal and realize that I was in a normal state. I was just seeing the world differently.
Now, how do you help people who you would consider to be going through a spiritual transformative crisis?
Well, I find that a lot of it's interesting. After I came out with my experience, I've had a lot of interest from psychiatrists and psychologists who are realizing that there's similarities in my story to some of their patients. And so, they've consulted with me and said, Lori, how do we treat someone who is having these experiences? And, what I feel is really necessary is the most important thing for me was validation. I didn't want someone telling me, you're just seeing things, or these things aren't real, stop it and take a pill and, go back to the way you were. I think, validation of what I was seeing, working with people who had similar experiences was huge for me. And unfortunately, a lot of times we're looking to be treated by someone with, a lot of fancy letters at the end of their name. And unless you've been through this experience, I think it's very difficult to know how, what that person truly needs. So I think it's a, I'm trying to bridge the gap here between psychiatry and spiritual awakening, and say, why don't we bring into the formula people who've had these experiences and work together with psychiatry in providing a treatment plan.
Now, how can people find out more about your work? Is there a website they can visit?
Yes, my website is LoriMorrison.com. It's Lori Morrison, with 2 R's. And I am also going to be in the Portland area. I will be at the New Renaissance Bookstore on Monday night at 6:30. I'm going to tell of my story of what happened, and then I'm going to work with the audience with some kind of recalibrating the human body into a kind of a Mayan calibration of the calendar system that I've been studying through sound, so that it kind of puts us back on that original calendar. And so for your crowd who's over 50, I think now that we're all around or have experience or around our 52nd birthday, this might be an interesting topic for those who might be going through a transition in their job or in their career, because as the Mayans have told us, that is a very pivotal point for us in our earthly journey.
Well, very good, Debbie. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program today. Very liberating.
Well, great, and I hope everyone has a very spiritually awakened day today, and that they enjoy this beautiful weather and this beautiful summer.
Very good, Deb. Thanks so much for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you very much.
We want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us. You can discover more. Visit us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter to stay up to date on what's going on in the world of Beyond 50, as well as upcoming programs. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.